Hi, we can see the lovely pink. Great. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the color study workshop. This is going to be a totally new style workshop. I had this idea when I was on one of my maternity leave walks, and I was just thinking it would be so fun to take a deep dive into one specific color. And so I thought it would be fun to start with pink because in my experience, first of all, pink is such a fun color to work with in brand color palettes. But second, I think that pink is sort of like a polarizing color. Either some people love it or some people just try to stay really far away from it. And so I thought it would be fun to just like learn more about pink because pink can be so many things. It's not just like one type of color. In the chat, if you can put where you're calling from, that would be so fun. I always love to hear where you're calling from. And you're going to see Chris. He is my husband. He's the developer of all of our tools. We work together on this business. He's going to be in the chat so that I can focus on the workshop. Yep, that's Chris. Seattle, El Salvador, Saudi Arabia, Minnesota, Switzerland. It always blows my mind to see where everyone's calling from. Thank you for joining. I know for some of you it was really late or really early, so thank you. But I am limiting myself to a hard 30 minutes for this workshop, so I'm going to dive right in. Here's what we're going to cover today. We are going to cover just a couple things, but they're all going to revolve around pink. So we're going to cover the color psychology behind pink and like my little hot take on how color psychology actually works. Then we're going to dive into famous brands that use pink in brand color palettes, the best neutrals to pair with pink, and how to choose the right shades of pink for your color palettes. Now, I am a graphic designer based in Nashville, Tennessee, and I focus specifically on brand color palettes. That's my zone of genius. I love to bring together psychology, business strategy, and graphic design and bring all those elements together. And my husband and I make tools to help other designers or other brands build brand color palettes. So fun. Okay, yeah, it's great to see where everyone's calling from still. So I wanted to start this off because pink is kind of a weird color. And so I wanted to ask the question, is pink really even a color? Sort of. Like everything is a color, but pink is a really interesting color when we're referring to the rainbow spectrum. So depending on like the color theory class that you take, you're going to get different messaging. But what I've determined is that pink is more of a perceived color than a spectral hue. Now, those are kind of like vocab words like hue and perceived color, but I wanted to break this down in a way that was really easy to understand. When we look at the rainbow spectrum, we actually don't see pink anywhere on here. The spectrum goes from red to violet with no light red or pink in between. There's not even really magenta in here. It just goes from red to violet. So that's how a rainbow looks. Like if you ever have paid attention to a rainbow in the sky, you've never seen pink in that rainbow. The sky might be pink if it's like a really pretty sunset or something, but pink is not actually in the rainbow. So can we call it a color? I mean, yeah, totally. But how do you explain this spectrum? Because if you're a graphic designer, you've probably seen this. And also, have you ever noticed, just type in a 1 if this is new information to you, that the rainbow spectrum does not match the spectrum in graphic design? Is that new information to you? Type a 1 if that's new. It was new to me. Before I started working on this workshop, I never noticed it. And then it kind of all came together when I was doing research to prep for this. The spectrum here is not a true rainbow spectrum. It is a graphic design software spectrum. CJ, oh, it's so good to see you, CJ. I was wondering if you were going to come to this workshop. Okay, so when we talk about the color spectrum in graphic design softwares like Canva, Figma, Adobe, you're going to see two different things. Now, I've never seen in like a textbook or anything what these are specifically called. So these are terms that I call them. I call this one the color spectrum and this one the hue spectrum. So the hue spectrum is this slider bar down here where you can move it from like red to orange to yellow, green, or anywhere in between. And then we have the color spectrum up here, and that's where you can move around your little circle or color picker to go from like different shades within that hue. Okay, so color spectrum is one thing, hue spectrum is another. Now, the hue spectrum is like kind of sort of a lie. And I don't want to say lie because I mean, I know I just did, but lie is more of like a convenience. That's really what it is. The hue spectrum is made to be convenient for graphic designers. The pink you see inside that circle isn't a rainbow hue at all. It is a graphic design shortcut that appears when a digital gradient like this tries to connect the visible spectrum's reds back around to the violets. So it's sort of filling in that gap, that magenta, because otherwise it would just go from red to violet and then stop, and we wouldn't have anything to reconnect back. So if you've ever noticed in the spectrum, you can go all the way true red to the left and all the way true red to the right. So it's just a full, what would that be, like 360-degree, or it connects the spectrum end to end. Is that new to you? Type a 1 if that is new to you, that spectrum fun fact. Okay, I find that so interesting. And it makes a lot of sense, especially when you're going to create color palettes and you're trying to connect colors together. I think it's really, really helpful to better understand the hue spectrum. So my whole life is a lie. At least the spectrum is, but I feel like the more we understand it, the better we can use color and create color palettes, because we're understanding how these things connect to one another. And the more I deep dive into these spectrums, the more I understand color. So it's absolutely something worth learning about. So then when we cover that, we want to think about like, well, what is pink? If pink isn't part of the rainbow, what is it? Typically, it is a tint of red and or magenta. So it is a tint. Now, tint is a fun little vocab word. There are a few ways to describe color. First is hue. Hue is like the pure raw color. So when we were talking about this hue spectrum, hue is like whatever we land on in here. That is the pure raw color. Now, a tint is when we take that pure raw color and we add white to it. And shade is when we take that pure color and we add black to it. So tints are lighter, shades are darker. That's pretty basic stuff. If you work in brand color palettes, you usually make tints for colors and shades for colors. Now, the color recipe to make pink is super simple. If you ever like made icing for cupcakes or something when you were a kid, you probably know you have to combine some sort of red with some sort of white, and you're going to end up with pink. Now, the ratios for those are different, but pink is not a color that you're going to land on the hue spectrum. It's something that you're going to make by combining some sort of red and some sort of white. Side story, I was visiting a friend over Christmas, and she had, I think he was like a 2-year-old boy, and he was playing with all these different toys, and they were like colored, like fruits and vegetables or things. And she was trying to explain to me that he was having a really hard time like repeating the word pink. He could identify red and green and yellow, but he just couldn't grasp pink. And I told her, like, maybe your kid's really smart, because pink actually isn't like one of those colors. Pink is sort of a pastel. So it would be like if a kid didn't understand the difference between light blue and bright blue. Like they're both blues, it's just one's lighter. So if you ever meet a kid who's struggling to identify pink, it's okay. Okay, so when we look at the hue spectrum, we tend to find pinks in this circle over here, or I forgot to actually mark that circle, but in this circle over here. So anywhere that's sort of touching the borders of the reds on the hue spectrum, that's where we're going to find pinks. And we're going to actually generate them usually from this part of the color spectrum. So let me show you. A true pink, like I just showed, is pure red, pure white, and that gets you pink. That's like true pink. But there are lots of alternative pinks out there. So we can make pink a little bit warmer by pulling it more towards orange in the hue spectrum. So if you want a warmer pink, you can take that color or the hue spectrum, move it more towards orange, and then pull something from up here. So this is like your salmons, your corals, things like that. Your peachy pinks, those are all going to be over here. If you want it to be cooler, you can pull it more towards the violet end of the spectrum. So you're going to end in that like that magenta area, and that's going to give you a cooler version of pink. So we can go warm or cold by moving the hue spectrum. We can also adjust the saturation levels. So if you want it to be a very saturated, juicy pink, like think T-Mobile. That's going to be really saturated, like a hot pink. It's going to be more towards the upper right corner of the color spectrum. If you want it to be a more dusty, like more mauve or muted pink, you're going to pull it from the top right and move it more towards the left, because that's going to have more gray in the color. So that's desaturating it. Okay. Now, the last way you can really play with pink is by making it lighter or darker. Super simple, super basic. If you go more towards the top of the color spectrum, it's going to be lighter, more pastel, more light. And then if you pull it down, it's just going to be deeper or darker. So if you want to like make this light pink have a dark color, accent color, or neutral, you just pull it down. You might end up with like a plum deep color. Does all that make sense? Type yes if you are understanding the difference between these different ways to play with pink. Warm, cool. Okay, awesome. Okay, good, good. I was hoping that this would make sense, and I don't have time to get like too deep into all of this, but I did want to just cover ways that you can play with pink. That's really how the entire workshop started. And actually, I'm going to pause for a second because I want to show you what this looks like in real time. So like if I were to change the background of this slide, I'm going to pull up the color spectrum. If I want true pink, I would start with red, and then I'd move the color spectrum over towards this area, and I'd have like a nice mix of white and red, and that's a true pink. Now, if I want this to be a little bit warmer of a pink, what I would do is just move this color spectrum over towards like an orange red, and then maybe make like a pastel version. So this is like a peachy pink. I can play around with this. I can make like a coral or a salmon, something like that. If I want it to be a cooler version, then I'm going to move this hue spectrum over here towards the magenta area, and I have more of a cool or bubblegum pink. Now, if I want to make it really saturated, I'm going to go up to this top right corner. Don't have to go all the way to the top. This is like neon pink, but I can also pull it over here. Yeah, like Barbie pink. I can pull it over a little bit, and this is still going to give me a very saturated bright pink. Anything in this zone is just super, super saturated. If I want like a dusty mauve color, then I can pull this down and go anywhere over here. Now, if I go up in the color spectrum, that's going to make it lighter, brighter. And if I want a darker pink, I just have to move it down. Now I could go down in this dusty area, or I can go down in this really bright area. And you can see how that changes the pink. If I'm over here and pulling it down, it's more of like a mauve-y gray color. And if I move it over here, it's like a bright, almost like plum or wine color. Isn't that fun? Like it's just so fun to just play around with pink and see all the different directions she can go. And I think doing a color study like this is just the only true way to really deep dive into a single color. Okay, back to the material. So now let's talk about color psychology. And I sort of have like a, I don't know if it's not popular because no one's told me it, but I have a hot take on color psychology, in that it can be super broad and, in my opinion, really, really generic. I tend to prefer palette psychology, which is how the palette performs as a whole. But in this case, we are going to talk about the color psychology of pink and when it really, really matters. So generally, when I just say pink, pink tends to symbolize femininity, innocence, peace, romance, playfulness, sweetness. These are some things that come to mind when we see shades of pink. Now, just in the chat, if I say, if I tell you to think of the color hot pink, what's one word that comes to mind when you think of hot pink? Like, how does hot pink make you feel? Bold, great. Bold, fun, bachelorette. Yeah, I live in Nashville, and I can tell you hot pink is definitely a bachelorette color. Vibrant, energetic, sexy, garish, flamboyant, loud, fun, sassy, flirty. Okay, now what about pastel pink? How does pastel pink make you feel? Like the color, this background color right here. Soft, 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 gentle, soft, delicate, baby, meek, innocent, amazing. Okay, so we can see that sexy, bold in the hot pink is very different than the soft and gentle that we get from the pastel pink. So that is a great example of how the type of pink that you use greatly influences how that pink is going to make you feel. So now we're going to talk about some shades of pink. and the ways that you can sort of categorize your pinks. So pastel pinks tend to make us feel like we just saw in the chat. They feel nurturing, innocent, comforting, romantic, soft, feminine. It tends to be associated with like more soft, gentle brands. Are there any brands that you can think of that use pastel pinks? Whether it's like their main color or just a color that they use in their branding? Glossier, yes, cosmetics, bakeries, Mary Kay, that's a great one. Yeah, cosmetics definitely lean into this color. And does that make sense, right? Because we want maybe things to feel a little bit more soft, a little bit more feminine. If we're going for like an organic or like gentle product line, maybe more innocent. So that makes sense. Now, another type of pink is what we call blush pinks. These are a little bit more dusty and muted. And I'm actually going to show you how we get blush pinks in the color spectrum. So we are going to just pull them down a bit. So like these are where you get your blush pinks. They're sort of like a little bit more dusty pastels. These feel sophisticated, romantic, vintage, artisanal. Then we have bubblegum pinks. These feel really playful, youthful, fun, and carefree. Now, bubblegum pinks are going to be in this area, and they tend to be a little bit on the cooler side. So they're like very, very vibrant pastel pinks. So if a true pastel pink is over here, bubblegum pink is going to be more like in this area and a little bit on the cooler side. Next, we have hot pinks. Hot pinks are, like we talked about a second ago, feels very bold, confident, rebellious, energetic. To some of us, it feels like sexy. What were some of the other words? Vibrant, energetic, bachelorette. Totally, that's how it feels. And a hot pink is going to be in the upper right corner of the color spectrum. So it's going to be a little bit off red, maybe a little bit of a cooler red. And it is going to be as north and east as possible on the color spectrum. So something like over here. I would call fuchsia a hot pink. I know someone just asked about fuchsia. Fuchsia is a fun one. Yes, okay. And then we have muted mauves. Muted mauves are like our most muted soft pinks. That's when we pull the color spectrum down and we have a lot of gray in the pink. So it's going to be more in the middle of the color spectrum, and it can have more cooler, like purplish tones to it. These make us feel calm, introspective, mindful, and inclusive. So if you're going for a brand that wants to feel that way, this is the type of pink that you would use. Yes, mauve is very much like a cousin of pink and purple together. So like when I do the purple workshop, I will probably also include mauves. So if you think of mauve as purple, then you are right on track. And that is a topic that I want to cover more, is that when we are in the hue spectrum, there is so much blend between colors. Like, for example, I can't get too off topic because I only have 30 minutes, but like when we're talking about neon yellows and neon greens, colors like this are so tricky because they're kind of yellow and they're kind of green. And so I think we can include them in both. And I like to sort of cover the warm and cool side of all colors. So when it comes to pink, the warm side of pink is like more peachy, a little bit more orange. And the cool side is more like pink or purple. So anywhere in that spectrum is where pinks can live. Yes. Okay, so now that we've covered these different pinks, pastel, blush, bubblegum, hot pinks, or muted mauves, is there one that is a type of pink that you prefer? Anyone have a favorite type of pink? Pastels, blushes, bubblegums, hot pinks, or muted mauves? Blushes, okay. Awesome. Hot pinks, maximum hot pink. I think I kind of love to mix together pastels and bubblegum pinks. I think that using these types of colors together is really fun for me because it gives like a bright, happy, playful vibe. I really do love a bubblegum pink. I usually stop short of hot pinks, but it depends on the brand, right? Mix them all. Yes, perfect, perfect. Okay. So now we're going to talk about some famous brands that use pink. Before we dive in the chat, what brands do you know of that use pink? Just like shout out any brand that you can think of. When you think of the word pink and branding, what's someone that comes to mind? Ooh, Pepto-Bismol. That is such a good one. Dunkin' Donuts. T-Mobile, Gucci. Does Gucci use pink? I guess I always thought of red and green for Gucci, but maybe I'm mixing that up. Barbie, Glossier, T-Mobile, Victoria's Secret. Victoria's Secret's a huge one. Crumble. Ooh, that's a really good one. I forgot about Crumble. The brand pink itself. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to show you some brands that use pink. Lyft. If you're in the States, you might be familiar with Lyft. I don't know if they're international, but they're like an Uber. They're a car service. They use a hot, bright pink. And this is just a snapshot from their website. And you can see they use pink in their logo, and they use pink in sort of some of their accent options on their site. And yeah, if you think of a color associated with the brand, it's going to be this hot pink. T-Mobile is another really popular one. And my lawyer actually responded to the email that I announced the workshop with. And she said, fun fact, T-Mobile owns the trademark for their pink. So they are the only ones in their category that are allowed to use a magenta pink like this. So you're never going to see AT&T with a pink logo, which is very interesting. Color trademarks are so interesting and fun. This is a snapshot of T-Mobile's site. So you can see they really lean into this magenta color, even in their products, logo, call to action buttons, it's all over. Some of you mentioned Glossier. Glossier actually coined the term millennial pink. That's a fun deep dive. So this color they made super popular, very Instagrammable pink, especially for its time. And they use this light pink in their products. So a lot of their products, packaging uses a soft pink. They give away these little like plastic pouches with their products, and that uses a very similar shade of pink too. Pink by Victoria's Secret. I think someone mentioned this. Yes, CJ, the Glossier store is like a celebration of pink. It's so fun. The pink brand by Victoria's Secret, if you're unfamiliar, is like a sub brand, and Victoria's Secret's like the mother brand, and that definitely advertises more towards like women. Pink tends to advertise more towards like, I'd say younger girls, anywhere from like preteen to like, I don't know, early 20s is what I would guess. So they're advertising to a younger audience, which means they lean into softer colors, and they're trying to pull a little bit away from like maybe the more sexy grownness of Victoria's Secret and pull down into like a more youthful, friendly vibe. Now pink uses like a bubblegum pink, I would call this, with their pastel pinks. So they sort of like blend together a bunch of pinks. And then Milk Bar. Milk Bar, I don't think anyone said this, which I'm surprised by because they kind of have a famous pink. Theirs is a famous hot pink, and their color palette is really simple. They sort of lean into this pure black, pure white, and then this hot pink color. And it really sets them apart, especially in the baked goods industry, which tends to lead more into pastels, like Crumble. Crumble has like a pastel pink, I think is their brand color. And that's really common in the baking industry. And so I think Milk Bar stands out by leaning into this really, really like bold hot pink. Okay, now some brands use pink in their branding with other colors that are more hero colors. So like Dunkin' Donuts was something that was mentioned. Dunkin' Donuts leans into this pink and this orange. And so you'll see that in their product packaging. They lean into pink and orange together, and they're usually used together, which is a really important part of a dynamic duo palette like this with two hero colors. Another one is Billy Razors. Now, Billy uses pink, but what's really interesting about it is that like when you look at their website and you just take like a quick glance, pink isn't the only color that you see, and it's not the one takeaway that you would come away with. They sort of have this like blend of these bubblegum, purples, pinks, and oranges together. And another example is Fishwife. Fishwife uses pink, but I wouldn't call it like a pink brand. Pink is all over their website in little subtle ways. And so it's definitely part of their color palette, but it's not the one true color. Yeah, if you're looking for brand inspiration, Fishwife is so incredible. It is just a beautiful brand. Their illustrator is incredibly talented, and they use color in a really smart and very accessible way. I love looking at their branding. Okay, type a 1 in the chat if the logo or brand analysis was helpful. Did you find that helpful to go through different brands and see how they're using pinks in their palettes? Okay, good. Oh, that makes me really happy. Okay, I would love to do this with more colors. Okay, so now we're going to talk about neutrals to pair with pinks. Now, some things to keep in mind with pinks. is that the softer shades of pink can have softer neutrals. So if you're going for a more pastel or muted pink, you can have a softer neutral, like a more muted gray. You don't have to go all the way down to black or all the way over to like a deep plum. Softer colors can have a softer dark color for enough contrast. And if you're new here, when we talk about contrast, what we're talking about is this contrast score. And we want our color combinations to have a contrast score of 4.5 or higher. So I'm just going to show you in real time. If I'm pulling a little pink here, like a light pink, and I want a dark neutral to pair with it, I can start somewhere over here. So I don't need it to be a super dark color. As long as it hits 4.5 or higher, it's going to be considered accessible. Now you can go all the way down to black, but you don't need to. Okay. Okay. Now, another thing to keep in mind when pairing neutrals is that the brighter shades of pink will need more contrast. So going back over to this color contrast tester, if I'm going for like a brighter shade of pink and I tried to use that gray from before, do you see how we're just not meeting those contrast minimums? That's because we need to have more contrast. We either need to make it darker, like more towards black, or go a little bit brighter over to the bright side of the spectrum. Another thing to keep in mind is that you can always pull down a shade of pink to make a dark neutral, and that's going to make a perfect like color buddy for that pink. So if I'm playing with, say, this pink over here, and I want to make a dark neutral for it, all I need to do is just pull it down until I hit 4.5. So you can just make a darker version, and it's going to be a perfect complementary dark neutral for that color. Now, this is a mistake I see in branding all the time, is that people want to combine pink and white because it's so cute on paper, but it almost never works for accessibility. So like even with this super bright pink here, if I were to combine it with white, we're not going to have the contrast that we need for text and background colors. And it's really bad with pastels. Some brands will try to do this and it's just really, really inaccessible. So be careful not to do that. And here are some of my favorite neutrals for pinks. Obviously I like white. I think white goes with every color. And I also like creams and ice. So like a little bit of a warm neutral or a little bit of a cool neutral or like a light gray. I also think walnut works really well with pinks, like a nice soft muted brown, charcoal, like that gray I just showed you towards the left of the spectrum. And then these are some other unexpected dark neutrals for pinks: navy, wine, and onyx. So navy, I saw someone was surprised by navy. That one is a really great color with pink. Like if we're looking at pink here and we want to just make like a deeper blue, just because of the cooler nature of pink, it's a really great color combination, especially if you're going for a design style that is maybe more bold and bright, vibrant, or leaning into like a cosmic vibe, cosmic ethereal vibe. I have mom brain right now, so I almost said cosmetic vibe, cosmic vibe. Navy and pink work really well together. Yeah, it's a great combo. Green, yeah, let's look at green. If we wanted to combine pink with green, like let's just say we want to pop over here. Obviously, we can't go with a vibrant green. Anything like this is just not going to give us enough contrast, but we can pull it down and do a really nice combo like this. I think like a really soft pastel and like a rich jade emerald color is just a delicious combo. This is such a nice accessible combo. Garden vibes, exactly. Okay, made it to 2:30. I have a little bit more to show you. This will not take more than 10 minutes. So if you have to hop off, I totally understand. But I'm also going to show you some tools to help you use pink properly and the things that I use to really help me use pink in a smart way. So Color Palette Pro is the tool that Chris and I created to help designers make color palettes. And there are a few different starting points for this tool. I'm going to show you design styles because this is how I recommend playing with pink if you're working with a client or if you're building a color palette for yourself. First, you're just going to choose a design style that feels right for you. So if I want, I can go with like a modern romantic design style. There's pink all over this. And it's going to give me this color palette formula. And I can change the palette size to be whatever I want. I can hand pick these if I want. So I can just like hand build out a palette by following this formula, or I can click this generate palette button and it's just going to rotate different options within this formula. So I can choose pinks in here because there's tons of pinks in this design style, but there are some design styles that you might not think of that have pink that do have pink options. So like cottagecore is a great example. Cottagecore, you might not think of pink when you first see it, but there are tons of pink options within here. So you can build a color palette that uses pinks really well just by following this formula. And maybe you want to lean into like a softer side of cottagecore, you can do that. You can lean more into pink by adding in more pink and purple hues, or just have pink as an accent color. There are some other design styles that I think like you definitely would think of pink. So bright and warm. Bright and warm is like a bright boho aesthetic. This one has tons of pink options. And with this, you might pair pinks with more like yellows or oranges. So like I'll just generate some random ones in here. Like this is definitely a bright and warm aesthetic color palette. It's got more warm pinks and less cool pinks, if that makes sense. So this has like the pink psychology built into it based on the design style. And another one that I find really interesting is like neutral and minimal. You might not think of pink when you think of neutral and minimal because you might think of it as just like beige brands, but you can totally pull in some softer pinks with this style. Pardon me. You can add in some beige tones. You can add in a baby pink if you want, or like a really light muted, like mauve color. You can pull that in. Another point that I wanted to make, and I'm actually going to flip back to those brands. Okay, so when we're looking at Milk Bar, for example, they use this hot pink. Because they use this hot pink as their hero or their main brand color, that is the only color that you think of when you see their site. And so that pink, that color psychology behind that pink is super, super important because that's the only color that people are really thinking of. But like with Billy or with Fishwife, the color psychology of that pink is actually less important because there are other brighter, bold colors that tend to be associated with that brand. So the number of colors that you have in your palette is going to influence how important the psychology of that pink actually is. I'll take a sip of water and read your questions. Okay, someone asked, can I import colors into the tool? Yes, you can absolutely import colors into Color Palette Pro. And actually, let me show you how to do that using the DIY style. So you can DIY and you can add colors manually. So I'm just going to like add in a few colors. Like let's say you have a color palette that uses maybe these colors. Okay, so you're playing around with these colors and you think, oh, these are really cute. Oh, you actually added a color. Let me see if I can add that in. Okay, I'll add that later. So you're playing around with these colors and you go to use the color contrast tester that's built into the tool and you realize, oh no, there's no pairings that have contrast scores of 4.5 or higher. Well, you can use this handy dandy button here that says get more pairings, and it's actually going to suggest light and dark neutrals that will complement your color palette. So it's going to pull in colors. So you can select a few of these. I'm just going to select a few. And then if I click now, I can see all of these high contrast pairs. So it's going to fix your palettes for you using colors that are already in your color palette. Now you can add in different colors if you want, but we really wanted that get more pairings option so that it would fix your palette using colors that are already in your palette. So like something that's super common that I see is a color palette that's like this light pink, maybe like something in that range, like a beigey color and white. So brand will want to use a palette like this. Super cute, right? Super soft. And they might even have a color that's like this, and they think, oh, that's good enough to be a dark neutral. But when we look at the color contrast tester, there are no high contrast pairs here. So if we click get more pairings, all we need to do is just choose a dark neutral from that list. And then bam, our color palette's fixed and we have all of these high contrast pairs. So to answer your question, yes, Thank you, Rose. Rose said this is a tool that always feels custom made for designers instead of thoughtless pairings. Absolutely. That's why we made it. We made it with designers in mind, because I'm a graphic designer and I wanted something that could do a ton of heavy lifting for me so that I could focus on the design stuff that I really loved. Someone asked, do you think bubblegum pinks, like Milk Bar's color, can mix well with a natural beige? Totally. Yeah. And let's actually look at Milk Bar's site. I'm not positive if they have a little bit of beige, and I mean, cookies, baked goods naturally have some. So they're a great example of using like a beige and a hot pink together. If you want a great example of this, just go to Milk Bar's page. Excellent color use there. Okay, so Color Palette Pro is our like main hero tool. And another product that we're literally launching today is called our Color Palette Kit. And this is a kit that is made of all pinks. So Chris can drop the links into the chat. And something that we wanted to share is that we are doing a birthday sale. It is the Color Palette Studio's second birthday this week. So this business is 2 years old and we started it 2 summers ago. And we are doing a big birthday sale of 35% off anything in our store, including bundles, with code birthday party 35. So if you've been waiting to get a tool, this is our biggest discount of the year. We love to celebrate our birthday. And this is the best way to either get Color Palette Pro, which never goes on sale, or one of the Color Palette kits. So I'm going to show you the Color Palette kits because these are really, really fun. So the pink Color Palette kit is our all new kit, and it has color palettes that all use different shades of pink. So let me show you a little preview. Here's some of the color palettes in the kit, and it's just a full spectrum pack of 20 designer approved color palettes that all have pink in them. So you'll see some of them have hot pink, some of them have bubblegum pink, some of them have pastel pink. So it's a great sort of tool to have on hand if you are working in a project and you want to be able to pull out a pink color palette. And just for the workshop attendees, if you purchase the pink color palette kit before Friday, we're going to give you a butter yellow color palette kit for free. So you'll get a free color palette kit if you buy the pink color palette kit. Let me show you the pink color palette kit. This is what's included. It is a Canva template. And so you can fully edit any of these pages. This is the PDF of it, but you're going to have pre-made style guides. You're also going to have different ways to copy and paste these color palettes over to your brand guidelines, for example. The colors are all named, and we're going to give you the color codes, including a hex code, RGB, CMYK, and HSL. And you're going to be able to use the tints and shades. So we're going to give you the tints, meaning lighter versions, and the shades, the darker versions of all the colors, and approved pairings. This was something that was super important to me. We wanted you to be able to have built-in color pairs and contrast ratios for every palette. So if you maybe don't have a color palette tester or don't want to break out a color palette tester, you can just grab one of the palettes from this tool and have everything in there. Another thing that I wanted to show you, let me actually pull up the kit. So if we are in here and we see a color palette that we like, let's say maybe we want to use like color palette 2, we can grab this code here. This is called the studio code. This is something that works with our tools. And I can click import in Color Palette Pro, paste in that studio code, and click import colors, and it's going to import everything. So it'll import all the colors and the color names and the approved pairs. So if you use Color Palette Pro a lot for your brands, the Color Palette Kit is going to work really well with that. Okay, that is everything that I have. I know I went 10 minutes over, but honestly, I'm shocked I only went 10 minutes over because you know how chatty and like deep divey I can get. Can you let me know in the chat, type a 1 if this was something that you enjoyed? Did you enjoy taking a deep dive in pink? Yes? Okay, 1 with lots of exclamation points. Great. I'm curious, you can just type yes, no, whatever your thoughts are. Would you want me to do a workshop like this for other colors? And if so, are there any colors that you really want me to start with? Green. Oh, green would be fun. Yes, green. Oh, lots of votes for green. Okay. Burgundy, purple, yellow. Yellow is so hard to work with. Good. Do you feel more confident using pink in palettes after this workshop? Yes. Okay, good. That makes me so happy because pink is so many things. Pink is not just like for girly brands or feminine brands. Pink can take all sorts of forms, and the psychology of different types of pinks is so nuanced. Pink is my signature color. I love that. Like Elwood's. Good. Oh, I am so, so happy. Okay. It would be really fun, I think, to do like a Roy G. Biv series where I covered all the colors and just did a deep dive on a different color every once in a while, just to have one of these workshops because I love putting them together and I love talking about color. It's my favorite part of the job. Okay, I'm going to wrap up, but just to sum up, if you want to use pink a little bit more easily in your palettes, I would recommend these two tools. Color Palette Pro is going to be your pro level tool. This is going to allow you to generate random palettes that use pinks based on different design styles. So you can just play with pink all day, or you can upload a photo that has pink and pull colors from that, or use some of our pre-made design styles. This is our hero tool. More than 2,000 designers use and love this tool. And if you would like to try something, that's just a little bit more like done for you, I would recommend the Pink Color Palette Kit. It's $29 for 20 pink color palettes, and it's 35% off today. So you're going to get a great deal, and you'll get butter yellow color palettes for free if you get the pink color palette kit. If you buy the pink color palette kit, you'll get the butter yellow one automatically. It'll just be emailed to you after you buy the pink kit. Yes. Oh, Aspen says, I've been loving the Color Palette Pro update. Yeah, we made a major update to it a few months ago because we wanted the tool to be like the very best that it could be. And now it is. It's so fun. Okay, thank you all so much for coming to this workshop. And thank you, Chris, for hosting and for taking care of our baby so I could do this. Chris, you want to pop on and say hi? Is she crying? Maybe not.
No, she's good. She's
Okay.
in her little shirt here. She's very comfy. And yes, the birthday code's for Color Palette Pro. It's for everything. And we love to see what y'all make with it. Sometimes
Mhm.
people will post and tag us with what they make with Pro or our other tools, and that hits us right in the heart. We love that a lot. So please do tag us if you make something with our tools so that we can share it and get your account some visibility on what you're working with as well. But thank you so
Absolutely.
much for being part of this community. And this was a really fun webinar. I actually really like pink.
Yeah, it's fun, right? Yes, we have lots of pink things in our lives now that we have our new baby girl. Lots of pink onesies and blankets. She's a sweetheart. Her name is Betty Peach, so her signature color is a peachy pink. Peach is a very important color for us. Okay, everyone, go enjoy your day. Go enjoy your week. Thank you so much for being here and for supporting the Color Palette Studio. And I will let you know when we're hosting another workshop, hopefully very soon. Thanks, y'all. Bye.